Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain drummed against the coffee shop window. As Elena stirred her lukewarm latte, watching the droplets race down the glass. She shouldn't have come. She knew that. But when Marcus had texted her that morning, just 3 words, "Please meet me," her heart had betrayed her logic once again. It had been 6 months since she'd last seen him. 6 months since the wedding. That should have been the end of their story. 6 months since she'd promised herself she would forget the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, or how her name sounded different when he said it. The bell above the door chimed, and Elena's breath caught. Even without looking up, she knew it was him. She could feel his presence like a magnetic pull, the same way she always had. Marcus stood in the doorway, his dark hair damp from the rain, his blue eyes scanning the nearly empty cafe until they found her. Time seemed to freeze as their gazes met. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she set down her cup, the porcelain making a soft clink against the saucer. Marcus moved toward her table with the careful steps of someone walking on thin ice, knowing that one wrong move could shatter everything. "Elena," he said quietly, sliding into the chair across from her. His voice was rougher than she remembered, tinged with something that might have been regret. "You came," she whispered, as if speaking any louder might break the spell that had brought them both here. "I wasn't sure you would." Elena looked down at her hands, studying the simple gold band on her ring finger. "I wasn't sure either." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and buried feelings. Outside, the rain continued its relentless rhythm, creating a curtain of privacy around their corner table. Other customers came and went, but Elena and Marcus remained frozen in their bubble of shared history and impossible longing. "How is David?" Marcus asked finally, though the question seemed to pain him. Elena's wedding ring suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He's good, working a lot. The firm is keeping him busy with that new merger." Marcus nodded, but his eyes never left her face. "And you? Are you happy?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena had been asking herself the same thing for months. Her marriage to David was comfortable, stable, everything she had thought she wanted. But comfortable wasn't the same as passionate, and stable wasn't the same as alive. "I thought I was," she said honestly, "until I saw you at Sarah's wedding." The memory of that day crashed over both of them. Elena had been there as David's wife, Marcus as the best man. They had tried to avoid each other, to pretend that the spark between them had died with time and distance. But when the music played, and Marcus had asked her to dance just one dance, for old time's sake, Elena had felt herself drowning in the familiarity of his touch. "I've thought about that dance every day since," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "The way you felt in my arms, the way you looked at me when the song ended. I know I shouldn't have asked, but you did anyway," Elena finished. "Just like I shouldn't have said yes, but I did." Marcus reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Elena, I need you to know something. I tried to forget you. After you chose David, I tried to move on. I dated other women, threw myself into work, even considered taking that job in Seattle just to put distance between us." Eleanor's heart clenched. "Why didn't you?" "Because running away wouldn't change how I feel about you. And deep down, I kept hoping that maybe, someday... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Someday what?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. "Someday you'd realize that what we had was real, that it was worth fighting for." Elena closed her eyes, memories flooding back like a dam bursting. She and Marcus had met 3 years ago at a bookstore, both reaching for the same novel. Their hands had touched accidentally, and Elena had felt an electric shock that had nothing to do with static electricity. They had talked for hours that day, about books and dreams and the kind of deep, meaningful things that most people were too afraid to discuss with strangers. What followed had been the most intense 6 months of Elena's life. Marcus wasn't just her lover, he was her best friend, her confidant, her creative partner. He encouraged her writing when everyone else saw it as a hobby. He understood her silences and celebrated her quirks. With him, she felt fully seen and completely cherished. But Marcus was also unpredictable, a freelance photographer who lived paycheck to paycheck, whose biggest commitment was a 6-month lease on a studio apartment. When David had proposed stable, successful David with his 5-year plan, and his talk of houses and children, Elena had convinced herself that security was more important than passion. I was scared, she whispered now, opening her eyes to find Marcus studying her intently. You made me feel things I didn't know how to handle. David was easier. Easier, Marcus repeated, and Elena heard the hurt in his voice. Is that what you wanted? Easy? I thought it was. My parents' marriage was so chaotic, so full of drama and uncertainty. I swore I'd never put myself through that. And now, Elena looked around the coffee shop, at the ordinary people living their ordinary lives, and felt a stab of envy. How simple it must be to love someone without complications, without the weight of wrong choices and missed chances. Now I realize that easy isn't the same as right, she said. David is a good man. He deserves someone who loves him completely, not someone who thinks about another man during quiet moments. Marcus's breath caught. Elena, I know it's wrong to feel this way. I know I made my choice, but seeing you again, being this close to you ... She shook her head. It's like no time has passed at all. Like, I'm still that woman who would stay up all night talking with you about everything and nothing. You are still that woman, Marcus said firmly. She's just been hiding. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. But I'm married now. I made vows. I can't what? Can't admit that you still have feelings for me. Can't acknowledge that we have something rare and beautiful. It doesn't matter what we have, Elena said, though the words felt like glass in her throat. It's too late. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. Do you remember what you used to say about your writing? About how the best stories are the ones that make you uncomfortable, that force you to confront truths you'd rather ignore. Elena nodded, remembering countless conversations about art and authenticity, about the difference between living and merely existing. Maybe this is one of those moments, Marcus said softly. Maybe the comfortable choice isn't always the right one. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I have to go. Elena, wait. But she was already moving toward the door, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could hear Marcus calling her name, could feel his presence behind her, but she didn't stop. She pushed through the door and into the rain, letting the cold droplets mix with her tears. She made it 3 blocks before she heard footsteps behind her. Marcus caught up to her at the corner, both of them soaked and breathless. You can't just run away, he said, his voice raised over the sound of the rain. Not again. Watch me, Elena shot back, but her voice lacked conviction. I won't let you disappear for another 6 months, or 6 years, or forever. Elena spun, to face him, her hair plastered to her face, her carefully applied makeup ruined by rain and tears. What do you want from me, Marcus? What do you want me to say? I want you to be honest. With me, with yourself, with David. I want you to stop pretending that what we have is just some meaningless attraction that will fade if you ignore it long enough. Then what? I destroy my marriage. Hurt a man who's never done anything wrong except love me. And what about you? Marcus stepped closer, his eyes fierce with emotion. What about what you want? What about your happiness? Elena felt something crack inside her chest. I don't know what I want anymore. I thought I did, but seeing you again. Tell me, Marcus said quietly. Tell me what you're feeling right now. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw all the love and longing she'd been trying so hard to forget. His eyes were the same deep blue that had haunted her dreams. His mouth still curved in that half smile that made her heart skip beats. Standing there in the rain, he looked like something out of a romantic movie. Too perfect to be real. I'm feeling like I'm drowning, she whispered. Like I've been holding my breath for so long that I've forgotten how to breathe. Marcus reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. Then breathe, Elena. Just breathe. The touch was electric, sending shivers down Elena's spine that had nothing to do with the cold rain. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every rational thought screaming at her to step away. This is insane, she murmured. I know. It's wrong. I know that too. Then why? Because sometimes the wrong thing is the only thing that makes sense, Marcus said, cupping her face in his hands. Because I love you, Elena. I've loved you since the moment we met, and I'll love you until the day I die. And I hope that you love me too. Elena's eyes flew open, meeting his intense gaze. The words she'd been holding back for months, for years, pressed against her lips like caged birds desperate for freedom. I do, she breathed. God help me, I do love you. The admission hung between them, more powerful than any storm. Marcus's thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away tears she didn't realize she was shedding. Then what are we going to do about it? He asked. Elena pulled back, the spell broken by the reality of their situation. We're going to go our separate ways. We're going to pretend this never happened. We're going to lie to ourselves for the rest of our lives. Be responsible adults who understand that love isn't always enough. Marcus's hands dropped to his sides. Is that what you really want? Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling the chill of the rain. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is doing the right thing. And what if the right thing is following your heart? My heart has gotten me into enough trouble already. They stood facing each other in the rain, both breathing hard, both struggling with the weight of unspoken possibilities. Elena could see the war playing out in Marcus's eyes, the desire to fight for her battling with respect for her choices. I should go, she said finally. David will be home soon. Marcus nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? What? If things were different, if you weren't married, if we'd met at a different time, would you choose me? Eleanor's heart shattered a little more. Marcus, would you? She looked at him, this man who had shown her what it meant to truly connect with another person, who had made her feel alive in ways she'd never imagined possible. The truth was written in her eyes before she could voice it. In a heartbeat, she whispered. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Then maybe it's not too late. Of course it's too late. I'm married. I can't what? Can't choose happiness over obligation. Can't fight for love instead of settling for convenience. Elena shook her head, backing away from him. You don't understand. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You love me. I love you. Everything else is just details. Details like my marriage? Like the fact that I made promises to another man. What about the promises you made to yourself? to live authentically, to follow your dreams, to never settle for less than extraordinary. Elena felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, and Marcus was asking her to jump. Part of her wanted to leap, to trust that he would catch her. But another part, the part that had been carefully constructed over years of playing it safe, was terrified of the fall. "I need time," she said. "I need to think." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, pressing it into her hand. "I'm staying at the Marriott downtown. Room 412, I'll be there until Sunday." Elena stared at the paper, her fingers trembling. "Marcus... I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm just asking you to think about what you really want. Not what you think you should want, not what's safe or expected, but what would make you truly happy." He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, a gesture so tender that Elena felt her resolve wavering. "Whatever you decide," he said quietly, "I'll respect it. But I had to try one more time. I had to give us one more chance." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Elena standing alone in the rain with a soggy piece of paper and a heart full of impossible choices. Elena drove home in a daze, the windshield wipers keeping time with her racing thoughts. The paper with Marcus's room number sat on the passenger seat like a loaded gun, dangerous and tempting in equal measure. She pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment, staring at the house she shared with David. It was a beautiful home, perfectly decorated and meticulously maintained. Looking at it should have made her feel proud, accomplished. Instead, it felt like a prison. The front door opened before she could gather the courage to get out of the car. David appeared in the doorway, his face concerned as he took in her bedraggled appearance. "Elena? What happened? You look like you've been swimming in your clothes." She forced a smile, grabbing her purse and leaving the paper behind. "Just got caught in the rain. You know how unpredictable spring showers can be." David wrapped her in a towel as soon as she stepped inside, his touch gentle but somehow wrong. Elena found herself comparing his hands to Marcus's, the way David's felt careful and measured while Marcus's had been electric and urgent. "I was starting to worry," David said. "You said you'd be home by 5 and it's almost 7. I'm sorry. I lost track of time." "Where were you? I tried calling your cell." Elena realized she'd had her phone on silent all afternoon. "I was at the library, doing research for a story. You know how those places can be dead zones for cell service." The lie came easily, too easily. Elena had always prided herself on her honesty, but lately she found herself creating elaborate fictions to explain her distraction, her restlessness, her growing dissatisfaction with the life she'd built. "A story?" David's eyebrows rose. "I thought you'd given up on the writing thing." The dismissive tone in his voice, the same tone he'd used countless times when discussing her hobby, made Elena's chest tighten. "I never gave up. I just put it on hold." "Well, that's good, I guess. As long as it doesn't interfere with your real responsibilities." Real responsibilities. Elena wondered when her dreams had become so disposable, when her passions had been relegated to the category of frivolous pursuits. With Marcus, her writing had been sacred, important, worthy of protection and encouragement. "I'm going to take a shower," she said, needing to escape David's well-meaning but suffocating concern. "I'll start dinner. Mrs. Chun brought over that casserole recipe you wanted to try." Elena nodded and headed upstairs, her body moving on autopilot while her mind replayed every moment of her encounter with Marcus. In the bathroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror, hair wild from the rain, eyes bright with unshed tears, looking more alive than she had in months. Under the hot spray of the shower, Elena let herself remember what it had been like to be Marcus's woman. How he would surprise her with midnight picnics and spontaneous road trips. How he would read her stories aloud, his voice bringing her characters to life. How he would look at her like she was the most fascinating person in the world, like he couldn't quite believe his luck in finding her. David had never looked at her that way. From the beginning, their relationship had been built on compatibility rather than passion. They made sense on paper, both professionals, both from similar backgrounds, both wanting the same things out of life. Or so Elena had thought. But what if she'd been wrong? What if security without passion was just another form of prison? Elena stayed in the shower until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the memory of Marcus's touch, the sound of his voice, saying her name, the way her heart had recognized him before her mind had time to build defenses. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her terry cloth robe, she found David setting the table for dinner. He'd lit candles and opened a bottle of wine, clearly trying to create a romantic atmosphere. "I thought we could have a nice quiet evening," he said, pulling out her chair. "You've seemed so stressed lately." Elena sat down, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "Just work stuff, you know how it is." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. I've been thinking about our 5-year plan, and I think it's time to seriously consider starting a family." Elena's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. "A family? We've been married for 2 years now. We're financially stable. We have the house. We're both in our early 30s. The timing is perfect." Elena set down her glass, her appetite vanishing. "David, we've never really talked about having children. Not seriously. Of course we have. Before we got married, we discussed wanting kids eventually. Eventually, yes. But not right now. I'm not ready." David's face fell slightly. "What's not to be ready for? We have everything we need to provide a good life for a child. Having everything you need on paper isn't the same as being emotionally prepared for parenthood. Elena, we're not getting any younger. If we're going to do this, we should start soon." Elena felt panic rising in her chest. The idea of having David's child, of being tied to him permanently through another person, felt like a door slamming shut on any possibility of a different life. "I need more time," she said carefully. "This is a huge decision." "How much more time? We've been married for 2 years. We've been together for 4. At what point do we stop waiting and start living?" The irony of his words wasn't lost on Elena. She'd been asking herself the same question, but coming to very different conclusions. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I just know I'm not ready right now." David was quiet for a moment, cutting his food with mechanical precision. "Is there something else going on? You've been different lately." "Distant?" Eleanor's heart hammered. "Different how?" "I don't know. Like you're somewhere else even when you're here. Like you're thinking about something you're not sharing with me." If only he knew how right he was. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes, to project the calm confidence he expected from her. "I'm just going through something. A phase, maybe. I'll work through it." "Maybe you should talk to someone. Dr. Patterson is supposed to be excellent with women's issues." "I don't need a therapist, David. I need ... She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "You need what?" Elena looked at her husband kind. Predictable David, who had never caused her a moment's heartache or a second's breathlessness, and felt the weight of her deception crushing down on her. "I need to figure some things out," she said finally. "About what I want from life. I thought you wanted what we've built together. The house, the stability, the future we planned. I thought I did too." The admission hung between them like a confession. David set down his fork, his face pale. "Elena, what are you saying?" I'm saying I'm not sure about anything anymore. I'm saying I feel like I'm sleepwalking through my own life. And you think that's my fault? No. Elena reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. David, this isn't about you. You're a wonderful man. You've been nothing but good to me. But? Elena withdrew her hand, unable to maintain the pretense of intimacy while her heart was pulling her in another direction. But I don't know if good is enough anymore. David stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I think I need some air. David, wait. But he was already grabbing his jacket and heading for the door. Elena heard his car start a few minutes later, the sound of the engine fading as he drove away into the night. Elena sat alone at the candlelit table, surrounded by the remnants of their attempted romantic dinner. The house felt enormous and empty, filled with the echoes of words that couldn't be taken back. She thought about the piece of paper she'd left in her car, about Marcus waiting in his hotel room. She thought about the choice she'd been avoiding, the decision that would determine the course of the rest of her life. For the first time in years, Elena allowed herself to imagine a different future. Not the careful, planned existence she'd built with David, but something messier and more uncertain. Something that involved following her heart instead of her head, taking risks instead of playing it safe. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Elena spent the night pacing the house, David's absence both a relief and a condemnation. She found herself in her small home office, staring at the computer where she'd once dreamed of writing the great American novel. The screen was dusty from disuse, the keyboard covered with the accumulated neglect of good intentions. She thought about what Marcus had said, about the promises she'd made to herself. When had she stopped believing in her own dreams? When had she decided that security was more important than authenticity? As dawn approached, Elena made a decision. She couldn't continue living in limbo. Couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when her heart was screaming for something more. She owed it to David to be honest, and she owed it to herself to be brave. She wrote the letter by hand, her fingers trembling as she tried to find words for the unfindable. How do you explain to someone that they're not enough without making it sound like a failure on their part? How do you justify breaking a promise without seeming selfish and cruel? In the end, she settled for simple honesty. David, I can't pretend anymore. I can't keep going through the motions of a life that doesn't feel like mine. You deserve someone who loves you completely, without reservation or doubt. I'm not that person, and I'm sorry it took me so long to admit it. I know this will hurt you, and I hate myself for that. But staying would hurt us both more in the long run. You're a good man, David. You deserve a woman who sees you as her whole world, not someone who's settling for safety. I'll be staying somewhere else for a while. We'll need to talk about the practical things, but I needed you to know the truth first. I'm sorry for everything. Elena, she left the letter on the kitchen counter, packed a single suitcase, and drove to the hotel before she could lose her nerve. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt like the longest journey of her life. Eleanor's hands shook as she knocked on the door of room 412, her heart hammering so hard she was sure the entire hotel could hear it. Marcus opened the door looking like he hadn't slept. His hair was disheveled, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion and hope in equal measure. Elena, he breathed, stepping aside to let her in. I left him, she said without preamble. I wrote David a letter and I left. Marcus closed the door behind her, his movements careful and deliberate. Are you sure? I mean, is this what you really want? Elena looked around the sterile hotel room, at the unmade bed and the suitcase open on the chair, at Marcus standing there like he was afraid she might disappear if he moved too quickly. I'm terrified, she admitted. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we can make this work or if we're just going to destroy each other. I don't know anything except that I can't keep living a lie. Marcus crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. Elena melted against him, feeling like she was finally home after a long, difficult journey. We'll figure it out, he murmured against her hair. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. Elena pulled back to look at him, seeing her own fears and hopes reflected in his eyes. It was wrong to come here. Wrong to leave David like that. Wrong to want this when I should have been satisfied with what I had. And yet you did it anyway, Marcus said, echoing the title of her story. And yet I did it anyway, Elena agreed. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. No regrets. Elena thought about David, about the life she'd abandoned, about the pain she'd caused and the uncertainty she'd embraced. She thought about the woman she'd been, and the woman she was becoming, about the difference between existing and truly living. Ask me again in a year, she said, when we know how this story ends. Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. I love you, Elena. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. I love you too, she whispered. God help us both. And then he was kissing her, and Elena was kissing him back, and for the first time in years she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. It was wrong. It was complicated. It was going to cause pain and heartbreak and 1,000 difficult conversations. But it was also real. It was honest. It was hers. Outside, the sun was rising over the city, painting the sky in shades of possibility. Elena closed her eyes and let herself fall into the uncertain future, trusting that sometimes the wrong choice was the only one that could lead to the right life. The story of Elena and Marcus was just beginning, written in the space between what was expected and what was true, between the life she'd planned and the life she'd chosen. It would be messy and imperfect and probably more difficult than anything she'd ever done. But it would be theirs. And sometimes that was enough.